Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Great Friday evening to all of you. Thanks so much for joining us. You are listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. And of course, if you're only listening at this point to a player somewhere or whatever, and you want to join the chat room or anything like that, go ahead and go to freedomslips.com and join the chat room. It's right there. Just click it and you'll get a generated funky name, actually, or you can make your own name. You can make a real name or a fake name. Or one time I went in there. Yeah, only once. And my name was Schmoopy or something like this. So anyway, I think that's maybe a default name. But get in there because there's a lot of cool people in there and generally who discuss the topics that we're on and bring a lot of information to the table as well. You know who we have today, and we're going to have just it's kick back because my guest this evening, this is going to be jam-packed information into 2 hours. Before I invite my guest, and I'll give you a little bit of background on her as well, I have a couple of news reports that I want to get through to you. First of all, I guess some people who listen to the show, I believe it was, might have been last Friday, yes. I've heard some feedback that some people were very, very upset that I had mentioned that Obama lied about Obamacare. So, I'm sorry. Why are you getting mad at me? He's the one that lied. I didn't lie about anything. He lied. He said you could keep your plan. You can keep your doctor. It's all over mainstream news. I didn't make this up, And the 20 guys that built the alternative website, that website is up and running. It's still up and running, and people are getting their health care through the alternative website. That's not the government website. And by the way, the government's up to $623 million on the website that they built for the insurance plans and so forth for the new health plans, and it still doesn't work. So I don't know what to tell you. Don't get mad at me. Please don't get mad at me just because I'm reporting the news. I'm sorry that you like Obama and you voted for Obama, but why are you mad at me for things that Obama is doing? That doesn't make sense. That's nonsense. Cut it out. Anyway, the next story that I want to bring up with you is very interesting. As you know, I've been doing a series with author Patrick Jordan and, of course, Dr. Will Spencer, and the series has been on zombies. And this is serious business. This isn't like a Halloween zombies or a Walking Dead type zombies. This is zombies, true zombies. We've been talking about a number of diseases that are pointing towards zombies. And of course, some of the questions that have been coming in as on the live shows, by the way, just to mention, they are going to be back having the discussion next month, Friday the 20th. You might want to mark that down. They're going to come back and do part 3 of the zombie series. But here's something that's really interesting. And this is starting to actually blow my mind as if the rest of it didn't already blow my mind. There is a news report out, and it's Kuru disease. Syrian Muslims infected with Kuru disease. I'm going to give you a link. You can read it on your own time if you want. Here's part of the report that really bothers me, because this is very similar to what we're talking about on the zombie series. Walid Theodore Shobet, a former member of the Radical Muslim Brotherhood, but now a truth-telling peace activist, writes in his blog that Kuru has been found in 8 to 20 people in war-torn Syria. And the only way it could have come about, doctors have confirmed, is through cannibalism and the consumption of human brain, as first reported by Arabian news source Zayman al-Awasal and substantiated by Orient News Television. 2 of the infected were sent from Syria to a hospital in Gaziantep in Turkey for further examination, then transferred to another hospital in Germany. One of the 2 was confirmed to have eaten human flesh. He eventually died. Shubat has written extensively on Islamic cannibalism, which can be found, and I'll give you the links. The asymptomatic incubation phase of Kuru disease. Pay attention. The incubation phase is between 5 to 20 years following initial exposure. So you can be a carrier for 5 to 20 years and don't even know you have it, with the average being 12 years. But the Syrian civil war began in 2011, and this suggests that the Kuru of the infected Syrian men would have been transmitted before the civil war, before 2011. So I'm going to give you the link. You can take a look at it. Of course, I've already given this to Patrick Jordan right before the show, actually, because I want to go down that rabbit hole there and see what more we can get of it. But, again, people had been asking about, are we talking about zombies who eat brains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, we just found some who get this disease, and we're going to talk about that disease on the show on the 20th as well. Another interesting and fairly concerning news story, and of course my producer lives in Florida. Massive Florida sinkholes swallows boat and swimming pool, threatens homes. Now, the sinkholes have been going on for quite some time, the last couple of years, and another large sinkhole has formed in Florida, causing parts of 2 homes to collapse in on themselves and swallowing a boat and a backyard, the whole backyard and the pool. Caboodle. The sinkhole in Dunedin, Florida, erupted early Thursday morning, yesterday, between the 2 houses, and by noon had grown to a size of about 70 feet wide by 53 feet deep. This is interesting because it's right in a neighborhood, and all that. Can you imagine, you live in this neighborhood and you live in a house, you and your family, and all of a sudden your home starts to fall down, like into the ground. This is crazy stuff. There was apparently some work being done to try to fill in what they thought was a sinkhole beneath the house the last couple of days. And this is from the fire chief's Jeff Parks. He said, the owner woke up this morning at 5:40, that's yesterday, when he heard noises on his back porch, went out and found the sinkhole at that point. Thank God it started in the backyard, not in the house itself. Conestoga Rovers and Associations, an engineering and environmental consulting company, confirmed it had been at the home earlier this week. Their company. A screened-in porch and a 14-foot-long boat at the home's property had collapsed into the sinkhole, and next door, the master bedroom and swimming pool had gone in. The garage at the second home was also starting to crumble by late morning. 6 houses in Dunedin, a city on central Florida's west coast, were evacuated, and power and utility lines were cut off after officials had arrived. The engineering company that was working on the house earlier in the week was also on the scene, waiting for the ground around the sinkhole to become stable enough for them to work to fill it. And I'm going to follow up on this story in the future because I have been following up with some other stories around the United States regarding sinkholes. And, they go in and they fill them up, but then they sink again. So I'm really curious as to what's going on. I have a couple of reporters out in New Orleans on this because, as you well know, there's a huge sinkhole in New Orleans, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And they have the Army civil engineers out there, and of course the roads are all blocked off going anywhere near the area. Otherwise, I'd have them go out and film it. But unless you own a small plane or a helicopter, I'm not going to see any more of the sinkhole over there. But anyway, I thought I'd send that out to you. If you have any, if you live in Florida or you know of any sinkholes in Florida and you want to contact me to investigate them, write me at info@thetruthDenied.com. That's info@thetruthDenied.com. Put in the subject line, Florida sinkholes information, and I'll definitely respond to you. And last but not least, we have an update from our favorite host of all times, who started this whole shebang on the air many, many years ago in the late 80s, Art Bell. And I love Art Bell. Well, we have an update from today from Art Bell. There have been like all these groups that have formed, and they're writing Sirius XM, and everybody's quitting Sirius XM, as you well know, and really fighting for him, and you need to get him back. And of course, we found out that Coast to Coast took over the spot that was Dark Matter. So even Dark Matter was Art Bell's show. So even if Art wants to come back, the spot's taken. It's creepy. It's just creepy what's going on. But anyway, Art Bell wrote to the public today, and he said, and I have a link for this, so I'll give you the link as well so you can read all the rest of the story on your own time for all of you who are fans of Art Bell. You all will never know how much I feel for you and for what you are doing in trying to support me, Art Bell starts. But I am going to ask you to stop. This will only make matters worse. Here's the bottom line. This is a job I took only because of my love for radio, not for the money. Heck, 75K is not ever going to make me rich. And if Sirius does not want me, they sure will not take me because their website is messed up. It will most likely just piss them off. That does not change the love I feel for all of you who are trying. I still feel I was right in my decision to halt what I felt had no real way forward and would make the same decision again today. I only took that decision after receiving a no to any further remedy. As you know, he approached them to try to fix the problems they were having, and they said no. Truly, I do not understand, says Art, why they would say no to me, wanting a way to stream, then turn around and replace me with Coast to Coast, which is doing exactly what I wanted to do. We just pissed them off. Either way, thank you for what you're all trying to do. I love you all, but please stop. So he doesn't want anybody out there trying to help or writing serious or whatever or posting all this stuff on Facebook. He just wants us to stop. And perhaps the only reason that I can figure out is that maybe it's making things worse as far as a possible lawsuit with him breaching his contract with Sirius. But anyway, if you really want to help Art Bell, write him privately. He has a Facebook page. It's listed in that article that I just gave to you from The Truth Tonight. Also, just pray for the man. Something obviously really seedy is going on, and he represents and loves the people. He loves his listeners. He wanted to straighten everything out. I can appreciate that as well. My guest this evening, we're ready? We're ready. How to break free of the archons, restore balance, and assist in the activation of our highest potential. Yes, that's my guest, Laura Eisenhower. Laura Eisenhower is the great-granddaughter of the USA President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a very controversial president, mind you. Laura is a galactic historian, global alchemist, Ascension guide, and is the great-granddaughter, again, of Dwight David Eisenhower. She is on a profound mission to reveal our true origins connected with the Magdalene and the Gaia Sophia energies of love and wisdom, and works to liberate us from the military industrial complex, the archonic systems, and false power structures. These forces connect many dots that are coming into our awareness, and now more than ever as our solar system aligns with the galactic planes. Now, what I want to say really quickly is I know Laura, and even in the last few years, I've watched Laura grow, expand, and become even more of what I term a goddess, a very loving individual, very powerful individual. Love is the most powerful tool we have on this planet. I'm grateful to have her as my friend and my sister. We pop notes back and forth to each other all the time. And, you know, it's funny because she'll be down when I'm down and we'll be like, "Arr!" And then we just lift each other up and we just keep moving. This is a warrior in the world. We really need her. I love you, Laura. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. I just love everything you shared, and I love you too, and I'm just really grateful for our connection. So wonderful to be here. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Thank you. So, Laura, you know, real quick for anybody who doesn't know you or anything, just a real quick, because we've got a break coming up at about 26 after, I don't know, about 8 minutes. So let's just spend the rest of this very first segment of the show. Can we talk about something real quick? I want you to publicly state, because I already know this and I think there's a lot of misnomers out there. You're not in this to throw your great-grandfather under the bus, are you?
No, I'm not. Absolutely not. And I'm not here to, hide anything about, who he is either. I'm just here for truth. So.
And you've been very eloquent about your truth, and so forth. And you've traveled to the underworld, I call it. You've seen some things that most people haven't seen. But I'd also like to convey to the public and the listeners that one thing that I do know about you is, you would have done this whether you were Eisenhower's great-granddaughter or not, right?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. Yeah. It just so happens that I landed in this family, so
Well, and here's what's inspiring. As anybody would know. I mean, think about this, listeners. You know, imagine if you were a great granddaughter or a great grandson or relative, let's say relative of Eisenhower, Dwight Eisenhower, one of the greatest presidents, by the way, mind you. Or how about being a relative of John F. Kennedy or Robert F. Kennedy or any of the above for that matter? And then you take a stance like you're doing, Laura, out in the world with, you know, your last name is Eisenhower. I mean, the first thing people say is, wow, is she related? Yes, she is. The stance that you've taken is huge, especially because of your bloodline, especially because of the, you know, the bloodline that you have been born into. I think it's exceptional courage. Have people told you about how much courage they think you have?
yes, I do get that feedback a lot. There's just so much hidden information regarding his administration, and it just, you know, has to come to light, and it's something that really shakes up, you know, even other members of the family, because it's stuff they don't even know. And yeah, it does take, you know, courage, but in the same way all of us, you know, need to stand in our power. You know, there's forces to move through, there's energies, you know, we need to contend with, and the more we can unify and share our information and our stories, you know, the more we, you know, really amplify the unified field, and we become a power force together. And that's the most important thing to know.
Yes, I'm going to quote something that is something that you've said. I knew this was the only way to help us break free from the grips of the controlling archons and demiurge. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Patriarchy. Demure.
Mm-hmm. Demiurge, yeah, you got it.
Okay, thank you. To restore balance and assist in the activation of our highest potential. Growing up in the Eisenhower family helped me not feel so alone. When I learned about Ike, his upbringing, the way energy seemed to affect him, and how he was aware of his incredible purpose and responsibility, I felt I was going through something similar. What I was discovering felt so serious. I was shocked daily with the realization that I had to confront this calling and face it. I deeply sensed this was a most crucial undertaking for our survival, and no matter how alienated, alone, lost, and misunderstood I was or felt, I would hold on to this as I hold on to flesh itself. There is no way to shake it off.
It's true. It's kind of a life or death thing. It's like it's wired in my nervous system. It's all I really stand for, and I don't know anything else. I mean, I don't know how to do anything else. And so, you know, it's courage, but it's also the will to survive. And it's the compassion and the love for the collective. That's the passion I hold and the motivating force, you know, behind what has allowed me to step forward, for sure.
Yes. And as well, don't you think that part of this is, you know, for any of us at any, you know, place in this evolution or self-awareness or whatever you'd like to call it, don't you think that really the psyche is so affected? Like when you find something as simple as this, I'll just use a example for the audience. You know, you're married to somebody for 20 years. You come home, you find so-and-so in bed with somebody else, and the shock that you feel at the very moment. But as you start to undo, you know, you start looking at it, and now you're going to get a divorce, and you find out that this person, you know, your wife or husband, has been fooling around for many, many years with this individual. And at first it's the psyche. I mean, you see what's happening. You see that they're together. You see them in bed. You're shocked. You're like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. But you have believed, your belief system for 20 years is that it's just you and me, babe, you know. And so it takes like a while for the psyche to assimilate the information, for it to become real so that you can act on it. Isn't that the case with any of this stuff when we start getting into multi-dimensional transitions, transmissions, downloads, etc.? It takes the human psyche a little while to assimilate the information to even be able to use it.
Absolutely, and that's so great that you mentioned that. I think I've used that metaphor before because that's exactly what it's like. And you know, the first response is shock. Maybe there's suspicion along the way, or something's not lining up, and you can sense something energetically wrong, which is probably the way we've all felt growing up. Something's not right about this system. Something's not right about what's happening to Mother Earth, and what's up with the news and the media and the distortions, and something is just not resonating organically. And then, then the whistleblowers and the exposure and the truth starts to come out, and that's when it's all busted. And then, the shock, and then the empowerment and the ability to stand up and say, I'm not going to allow myself to be a victim to this, and to enable it either. And that comes from the inner work and the strength we all hold inside. And I don't consider myself any different from anybody else. Bloodlines doesn't matter. Genetics doesn't matter. I mean, this is something we all have. It's our consciousness, and it's more powerful than anything. And we share in the inheritance of our ancestor. We all feel what's happened before us, and we all carry a piece of it. And so we all are facing this exposure, the busting of these energies. Now we gotta, allow ourselves to move through it, depending on where everybody's at, and then, really strengthen that call to create justice, and it's self-worth. It's understanding what we're made of and what we're not going to put up with anymore.
Absolutely, self-worth. You'd hit the nail on the head. See, we start with self. When doing this for the world, you start with self, get your self-worth back. Once you do that, you do become, you embrace the system. You embrace everything around you. And we become fluid, if you will, with those around us. Absolutely. Spot on. And thank you for sharing that. In the interim of this, I think that people feel, there is no peak zone, P-E-A-K, peak zone. In other words, this is life on this planet right now. This is all about every day moving forward, et cetera, et cetera. We don't get to the top of the mountain and just get to sit down and relax or anything. How does that make you feel to know that this is your life, and it will continue to be your life until the day you pass through to the other side?
Right. And then it may still continue. It's like a new set of challenges or things that we agree to. Well, I mean, I've gotten a lot more grounded. I give myself, the rest that I need. I'm being a lot more generous with myself to just keep my energy amped and to make sure I'm not, carrying too much of a heavy weight or absorbing too much or, extending myself to the point of depleting my own reserves. And that's, really helping me because it's that regeneration and the recharging that allows us to kind of get back out there and address whatever we need to. Because I found that, things were really piling up and I would find myself bedridden for days and just, really trying to find the balance. And now it's a lot easier. My kids are older. I feel their support. I have a good partner, finally in my life. And even, without those things, this is just a part of how we assimilate, how we stand in our power, and how we begin to reflect a more honest reflection of who we are, in the outer world.
And welcome back to a nice Friday evening. What a better way to spend it than with my dear friend, Laura Eisenhower. Laura, 2013, I think that's one of the things that I noticed, I don't know, I think it started around the summertime. I noticed a lot of people, or maybe June-ish, May, I don't know what it was, but, you described something in the first part of the show about how to pace yourself. And this year, maybe 4 or 5 months into the year, I think that you learned it, I learned it, and I know a lot of others who are in this field of enlightenment also started to learn it. Something happened this year. Like, it just seemed like everything amped up beyond my even understanding. And something did happen this year it felt like it was so heavy and it just wouldn't let up. It didn't matter. Like a full moon could come and go. Like the energy was on 11, like all the time. What was that? And what were we supposed to do with that?
Which time of year? I mean, which part of 2013?
Well, the first quarter of the year, like right after the first quarter, like around April, May-ish, right around there. It seemed, like April. I say April. Things just started to get heavy, and people started writing me as well about it or complaining about it. But then it just wouldn't let go.
Yeah,
the energy.
Yeah. I mean, this has been an intense year. There's been just a lot of heaviness, a lot of I call it like the byproduct, and almost, I mean, I don't want to get graphic, but it is the byproduct of the archons in a lot of ways, and it's the heaviness of energy that we transmit as well between each other. The chemtrails, the smart meters, all the upgrades and the techno intrusions and attacks. Them knowing that they're losing a grip, particularly after the solstice, the December 21st, 2012 period, really amped up, their agendas. We see it in the news. We see it in just, the false flags and all the school shootings. And we're still, seeing superstorms and all sorts of things. And it's so relentless that it's hard to take a breath and be able to really transmute that energy. Because what we're required to do is be the alchemist. And when we're getting so dumped on by the dark and we don't have the time and space to set aside for ourselves to work through it, to see it for what it is, and move it and shift it and take it to the next level, it really does weigh a person down. And a few conferences I went to this year, Sarasota particularly, for the Atlantis Rising Conference, that particular Stargate there connects to the ley lines of the Holy Grail and the spiritual marriage that was attacked 26,000 years ago with the Lucifer Rebellion, with the Nephilim reversal grid technologies. And they took a big step up to prevent everything flowing well for that conference. And so it was one thing after another, and it was brutal. And I could feel it in the house. I could feel it, just in the energy, just between people, and just, it was so overwhelming. So, what is one to do? You got to take a breather. You got to step back and, really recognize, where we're being played and what vibration we're holding and what our response is. And we're called to create justice. We're called to, expose these agendas, chemtrails, the nanotechnologies that are a part of that, wanting to link us into the artificial intelligence system. And then we have to understand, the solution. We can't just focus on that alone. So it's the path of, justice, but it's also, of course, the inner work and really looking at where we get hooked into and where it manifests in our closest relationships and how individuals in our lives, their weak points are targeted and they start to channel these dark energies, and then it creates drama, and then the byproduct of that drama creates an extra load of energy that we end up dumping on ourselves because we're weakened by what we hear in the news, because it's like a virus. We're weakened by what we see in the skies, and not just the poisons and toxins and just the realizations of what's happening with Fukushima and what it's doing to our consciousness and our psyche. On that note, it's constant bombardment on every single level. And so, we have to understand that we have access to frequencies that are far beyond what we're seeing. But if we're not able to access it, then we're bushwhacking or turning in circles in the muck. And it can affect our organs. It can also make these parasitic forces grow, because when our consciousness sinks to a lower vibration, it actually has a trigger effect on any chips, any implants, any nanoparticles, or any parasites that are in us, and they start to grow tentacles, and they start to really take over, and they vamp on our life force energy, which they siphon away from us to fuel these technologies that are, creating, the poisoning of the elements and the destruction of our morality and everything else. We're the free energy technology they want, and we're being used as a weapon. Our energy is being used as a weapon against us. So we got to cut the cords big time.
You're spot on. It's that you said it so awesome. You encompassed everything. That's what I love about you. This is so, no, seriously. Because, somebody brought up to me the other day, Laura, that, there's a difference between like standing together and being the resistance line, like resisting what the governments and the corporations and the, military industrial complex is doing, and trying to resistance, and that resistance doesn't work to resist anything. And so therefore there is and I believe this is within the lines of alchemy. There is a way in which to balance this, where we really actually allow this system that has been placed, overlaid, if you will, onto this planet, to allow it to implode on itself. Can you talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. And this is, the thing, I relate, I bring up the immune system a lot, and we have to understand that Gaia is an organism, and our unified field and our spirit energy is the immune system of the planet. When we come together and increase that vibration within ourselves and link it together, then we boost the frequency of the planet, which is able to contend with these technologies and these parasites and these, toxins. And because in the higher dimensions, the physics are different, and we know in our own lives, if we step up what we put in our body, our thought forms, the way we, trust spirit and the way we allow this energy to move through us, we become healthier and we get into balance, and we find that symptoms or physical symptoms that have been hanging on to us for a long time end up falling away. But we can't do that if there's an us and them. If we stay in duality, we have to embrace it. We have to give it the light and love that it's lacking, because basically these agendas are run on the negative ego, and it's the ego that is disconnected from source and is now connected to control agendas that it's getting downloaded to us. And many people don't realize they're enabling these agendas when they sort of allow that force to run in their lives. Anything that brings on the energetic of domination and control, or even swinging to the opposite, powerlessness or victimhood or feeling weak and at the mercy of everything happening outside of us. And so when we mix these energies, we allow that communication to happen, and those substances end up mixing, and we inform the dark and all that have been led astray without knowing it how to return to the light. And then the things that never will return to the light because they're inorganic and they're parasitic by nature and they only know evil, they have nothing to grab onto or attach itself to. So we have to look at healing our body in the same way that we heal the planet. We have to look at the laws of the body and understand that that's the natural laws and universal laws that creation and our earth body runs on. And the more duality we are to the processes that we go through within ourselves with the symptoms and illnesses we might develop, the more we choose artificial ways to medicate it, which produce new symptoms that we end up medicating, the more we push ourselves into sort of an artificial life support system, and we deny our own organic medicine, our own healing abilities. And we can't do that with the earth. We have to, accept and embrace to a certain degree, and then raise our frequency with that vibration that we're allowing ourselves to come into contact with, without the division, without the duality, to then, really transmute it. And if we get confused by that, we just simply need to look at ourselves. When we change our behavior patterns is the same thing. We have spiritual bodies, mental bodies, emotional bodies, and I think I said mental, but all these different layers of ourselves, and each one of them has an immune system. Our spiritual immune system knows how to deal with entities and parasites, but if we give our power away and we don't activate that part of ourselves, then we are staying in duality with the negative alien agenda. And we have to understand that we have to address it by looking at our own weaknesses and looking at how to bring love and light to those parts of ourselves, to return it and plug it back into source so it doesn't vampire anymore on those that are unconscious, because it's the unconsciousness that's our greatest enemy. When we become conscious, then we understand that what we've been unconscious to is actually our spiritual energy. Unconsciousness is the inability to recognize that we're multidimensional beings. And so most of humanity is walking around unconscious, but when you shine a light on what's unconscious and illuminate it, even if it involves the dark night of the soul or a difficult journey moving through gatekeepers, it turns the lights on, and then nothing can fool us because we're fully conscious beings. And so once we do that work, we send that frequency out to the collective, and that's what raises the immune system of the planet and helps us to shift into higher earth energies.
Did somebody put us to sleep?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, we could trace that back, to these, technological intrusions that have been planted. Also, the Anunnaki and the way that they really tinkered with our genetics. Adam and Eve, have been seeded. The first seeding was in Lemurian times, and then the final was, at the final stages of Atlantis, before that completely sank. And we are far different beings than we were, in Lemurian times. But basically, with the explosion of Maldek, wiping life off Mars and Venus, Mars ended up getting hooked into the negative polarity of Saturn, and it captured this Earth in a very low vibration, and it brought us down to third density, and it put us all to sleep because the duality of life and death ended up happening, and the amnesia started to happen, and they put frequency fences in our DNA and have separated us from our higher self. And so it's the deep inner journey of going through the dark night of the soul that helps us to remove that frequency fence. That's why people that are on the spiritual path recognize, hey, this isn't as easy as they thought. There's a lot of psychic attack. There's a lot of barriers to move through, because they don't want us to open the doorway and unlock the prison door and have our freedom and sovereignty. So, to be on a real spiritual path means facing, those energies. And very often people hit walls and then might, give their power away to a new age deception or to somebody else because they don't know how to move through that wall. But it's very important that people see those walls as the most potent thing that we can move through, without fear, recognizing that we don't need to fear these beings. They're actually afraid of us. And we just simply need to, conquer them and not run the other way when it gets difficult. Because there's all sorts of traps that'll say, oh, this will rescue you, this will help you, this will save you. When in actual fact, we need to move through those barriers to activate our DNA and to bring light to the junk DNA, which is really the unconscious energy that needs our attention so that it can be illuminated, which connects us to our ethereal body and the higher dimensions and the unseen world that very soon will be seen to us.
Are there people in government or the ruling elite class, etc., or Illuminati or Bilderbergs or anybody of that nature, are they aware of this? Are they awake to this? Are they conscious of what you just said?
I mean, definitely there are, the ringleaders that are conscious, but then, because of multi-generational abuse and the mind control and the trauma-based mind control, most of these beings are absolutely traumatized to the point of their soul, really leaving their body and something else stepping in. And this is passed on generation to generation. They're trained to do this. And, some are, fully conscious that they are, allowing this to happen or they're facilitating it, and they're agents of it. But for the most part, I would say that most have, no clue. The beings that are very angry, the Dracos and, the reptilian energies of the negative faction, are just out for our power, and they feed on our fear and their murder. It's about sacrifice and murder and harnessing the vril energy in a way that, uses the forces of nature and the prana of the earth and our own kundalini energy to kind of make this happen. And that's why we see in the news and in the media and in the entertainment industry such a lower vibration when it comes to sexual energy and the way the masculine and feminine relate. And so many people that are running those agendas and are sort of behind it, I would say they're conscious to a certain degree, but at the same time, it's a part of selling your soul too. I mean, not to be so kind of like cliche about it, but you have to be bent on power and greed to even allow these beings in. But when you're talking multi-generational abuse, it's a different matter because, a lot of high vibration souls are targeted. A lot of higher dimensional beings are targeted through, these infiltration agendas and through hybridization, so that there is a part of their genetics that have an affinity with it, which make them easily controlled and thrown into those family lines to begin with. So I would say it's a mix. Depending, there's different dimensions of all of it, those that aren't really in the earth plane that need the physical bodies to inhabit, and those that are in underground bases that are sort of hidden away, that are, basically humanity's caught in the middle. And the Illuminati bloodlines, the 13 families, are the hybridized, Nephilim races that, refused the genetic healing that mixing the reptilian and the Orphan lines, which are the Grail lines, could have restored. And in response to that, they rebelled even stronger and have set up this multi-generational abuse to keep them from waking up to their higher genetics so that they stay locked into the reptilian aspect of the hybridization that they were steering towards the evil. But because they refused the healing, the rebellion ended up getting even bigger. So every time there's a solution, they come back even stronger with something greater to suppress even their own lines being healed, because they don't want to be redeemed. They've bought into wanting to police the time matrix and the artificial matrix, and many are not going to give that up. But those that have been brought into it, they are waking up. And that's where what we see with, Aaron Green Hicks and Aaron McCollum, and all these people that are stepping forth that have been in these bloodlines that are saying, okay, we see the game now. We don't want to be a part of that anymore.
True. It sounds like what you just said. They've mutated it beyond recognition is basically what it is. This is just a horrible blasphemy against any sort of living, loving being. It's just so mutated beyond, like I said, recognition. Let me ask about the planet. And I want to go back to something that you said about the immune system, because I do think that we're symbiotic with the planet, and our immune system and the planet's immune system. I think they somehow go hand in hand. The planet's a very powerful being. The planet is the creator, and without the planet and everything that she, the creator, has given us, which is food, shelter, water, you name it, and each other, do you think that the planet itself, being this huge creator, could elect to rid herself of all of this and start over again?
Yes, and
what's her commitment? If you happen to know, what's her commitment?
Well, I mean, to me, this planetary body is different than any other planetary body in the cosmos, because when there was all these catastrophes happening and, basically the negative alien agenda that has been in the works from very early on, from the fallen founder races that ended up, rebelling, and one could call that the Lucifer reptilian agenda, but the names can throw people off. Basically that's the splitting of the masculine and feminine, and this is the entity that stepped forward from that separation. And in response to that, the mother energy split and became Gaia as we know it. And the higher dimensional energies ended up falling into harmonic universe 1, 2, and 3, the lower dimensions. And what it ended up doing is bringing energy from source, the energy matrix, into the physical planet, which means that the core of this planet, the inner sun, is a star, and it's a 13D core, which means that it has the potential to reach the 13th dimension, which is the mother arc, which connects us back to source. So it's an ascending planet. And because of these negative agendas, there's competing timelines, and they're artificial timelines. The timeline that's the one that is the Ascension timeline is the graduation timeline, and it's connected to divinity paths that are about reestablishing unity consciousness in our own inner union so that the negative ego can't attach itself to it. It can't emerge from that in our own nature. And so, anybody who's devoted to that path, focuses on, that inner work, or at least the unity of all of us. The kind of work you do and the kind of work a lot of our colleagues do is very much, a part of this. And so to me, the unconditional love of the mother, who does have the potential to be, ascending into these higher earth vibrations, is locked into this 3D, just like our DNA has been dumbed down to, 3. Mm-hmm. And also, our chakra system, sometimes we get locked in our lower chakras 1, 2, and 3, which are all about survival, powerlessness, and our emotionality, which keeps us from being in the heart because we're so distracted with these programmings and the news and the false flags and the 9/11 that we get easily steered on these artificial timelines. So the mother energy, unconditionally loving us, shows us and responds to us where we're out of balance. And even though, yes, the Illuminati is behind, the superstorms, the chemtrails, and all these dark agendas, they're using our energy to make this happen. And so they become the negative dream catcher. There's the dream of Gaia, which is the Ascension timeline, and our graduation timeline, which is, that we are able to come back into balance and we understand the knowledge based on the tree of knowledge, and we're able to graduate, or we get suckered into these artificial timelines through the agendas of mind control and everything I just listed that, that get in the way of our quest for knowledge because our belief systems are being attacked. And that's what the mind control seeks to do. And so the mother, is just showing us how well we're doing on our paths by, displaying to us with her unconditional love and vulnerability, the poisoning of her elements, which we need to look at as the poisoning of our own elements. When we're in our negative ego, we pollute our water element, we misuse our fire element, we contaminate our earth element, and then our air element, which is our thought forms and belief systems, are totally, sidetracked and distracted into these things that don't serve us at all. So what the earth is showing us is something we need to turn on ourselves and say, okay, how am I contributing to this? How am I enabling it? So we got to do the inner work, but we also have to call out justice. We have to expose these agendas. We have to name as many names as we can, and we have to call them out, because knowledge is power, but also the inner work is how to transmute the negative effects that all this stuff is having on us. And so, it takes both the right and left brain to address this, and we need, to cover all aspects of it to be completely and totally thorough. But because the Earth is, seated with this 13D core and there's a star there, she's going to activate this, and eventually, because we're in a stellar activation cycle right now, which is between 2012 and 2017, this is the time the natural stargates are opening, which they've tried to shut down through the shadow government's hidden Mars agenda and just all these other agendas to keep us, beneath our own divine inheritance and to keep us, just not in our sovereignty. They almost succeeded in shutting down the natural stargates, but they did not succeed. And it's our job from this point forward to keep expanding, to keep doing what we're doing, so that as many souls as we can possibly bring into this unified field can join in with us. Because there's kind of a bifurcation happening. The power of Gaia, her spirit is incorruptible. She will prosper. She will thrive. She's got many dimensions to her. But this particular one we're being called to clear, and we have a big choice right now. I think, all of humanity is going to receive the benefits of what the few have done, the truth keepers, the truth tellers. But there is, the potential that there will be a bifurcation and a splitting into Phantom Earth, which is a dead planet, which is on life support system with these artificial technologies and artificial intelligence and transhumanism. But there will still be those that ascend into these higher Earth energies. At least we've crossed that landmark. But now it's about, okay, let's bring as many with us as possible to the point, and you said it today, the tipping point. Where are we going with the tipping point? This is the time of the tipping point. Can we tip enough of the scale to bring in the whole of humanity, or is it just going to be some of us? And of course, if it's just some of us, we'll end up going back with another rescue mission to those that are trapped in Phantom Earth.
True. Interesting. I like what you said when you said that everyone will basically reap the benefits of the few who made the changes or helped to get that tipping point to a place where it actually tipped over or what have you. I love that. I don't know how many people can relate to that. I don't know how many people can relate to what's being challenged here and how few. With billions of people on the planet, how few people are doing this, huge work. It seems like it's always been that way, though. I don't see a time in history where, the whole planet got together and went, hip, hip, what I mean?
I know.
It'd be cool. It'd be great. But yeah, it's never happened. But, what you're also describing when you use the word justice, and I think that you're using a very this word, but the way you say it is the energetics of the way you say it is it's a higher justice that we're talking about. Justice meaning transparency, justice meaning the cracking, the breaking, the disposing, the getting rid of the illusion, the dark, the broken, the twisted. It's a different justice. It's not like when you say, the justice system, because when I hear the words like justice, right? When we hear the words justice, I mean, this goes to show you, for those who are listening, this goes to show you this paradigm here. When you hear the words on this planet, the justice system in our country, what do you think of immediately? The injustice system.
Yes, so that's what it is.
Right, of course. So when you're using the words justice, and it goes right into my body. I'm sure that everybody that's listening is doing the same thing too. We are using the same words, but they have different meanings.
It's justice connected to the real universal laws and also divine justice, which means that we get our freedom back. And instead of carrying the byproduct of the dark energies that infect us and cause us to act in lower, behavior patterns, we're standing in our power. We're calling our divinity forth and our divine blueprint forth. And standing in that energetic creates a backlash where they get dumped the karma of their ways instead of us carrying the burden of what they're doing and we're holding on to the anger. The minute we free ourselves of all of that, where does it end up going? Back to the source where it originated from. And that's real justice. That's justice that is brought on by nature. The balance of nature. Yes.
It's absolutely awesome, because this is what I was talking about, asked you about in the beginning of the show. If we get away from the resistance, if we stop resisting what this Illuminati and all the Bilderberg and the governments and the ruling elite and all the rest of it, they will implode on themselves. The system itself that they have manufactured, this whole artificial, bull.
Yeah.
You know, they will implode on themselves. It cannot, and I agree with you 100%. They cannot make it work without our energy, without us. We are the food that feeds it. We are the energy that feeds it. And I really think that people really need to understand it. And I think one of the best things, all the things you say are awesome, but I'm saying one of the best things that I like what you say is the self-empowerment, and we're back, The Truth Denied. And listen, I just want to mention real quickly, we are listener supported. I want to thank you all. And of course, for everyone who donates to Revolution Radio, go ahead and go to freedomslips.com if you want to donate anything or purchase archives or any of the rest over there, over here, over there, wherever. It only helps to generate, more hosts on the show. Let's say, we've got, I don't know, 75 hosts, I think it is. And it just creates more space for, these types of shows, etc. If you like my show, donate and let them know that, you'd like to keep me on the air. That'd be great. And listen, I want to thank somebody. And I think, Laura, I think you saw this too, because I see you liked the comment as well. And I just have to say this, on the air, Eric Marshesky. I hope I pronounced that right, Eric. He says, Namaste, my friends. I love you both. And thank you from the bottom of my heart for your help and guidance in these troubled times. Two of my favorite sources of information in one place at the same time. I am blessed. Eric, we are blessed to have you as a listener as well. We're all in this together. Don't you think, Laura?
Oh my gosh, we are so in this together. It's the only way.
Yeah. And then, you had, you Skyped something in, so I'm gonna read this too. Laura Skyped in on the break for me something to help me understand something. She says, after the comment that we closed the first hour with, which is, we were talking about the implosion of the government or the ruling elites, etc., and that they're using our energy. And she did a little clarification for me and said they are physical and non-physical. The non-physical try and work through the physical, so humans end up having these beings attached to them and then serve the will of these entities. Let's talk about that a little bit. Are you talking also about the entities? First, before we go there, I just have to say, it's very interesting how much is showing up in the connecting of the dots of what is showing up in the world. In other words, what is showing up in the soil, the air, the water, and human bodies, as well as, animals, which is these pathogens / parasites. It's really interesting. They're developing, and they have a tolerance, to all drugs, and, there's nothing you can take that can get rid of them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's just one dimension of what's really going on. I wanted to ask you, in relationship to that, these parasites, these entities that cling on to people and so forth, and this Archon network. James Gilliland talked about this a few times on the show as well. How the Archon network is like it's in all of our technology, our cell phones, these cell towers, their computers, and the whole just wreaking havoc. And then, of course, on the human body. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yes. Well, there's the Archon network, and then there's things like the Agartha network, and it's targeting the nervous system of our planet and of course us. And we have to understand a lot of these parasitic influences, are connected to nanotechnology, and just to address that particular aspect, which would link us into things like artificial intelligence and just really being bombarded with frequencies that keep our vibration low, keep us sick, and just keep this all going. We have to understand that they feed on electrons. They're very electrical, and things like Morgellons, where people are pulling fibers out, is an example of what the body, attempts to release. So it's very important to research things like magnets, because when you put magnets on the body and they're focused in a particular direction with each other, it actually makes these things go poof, because they're metallic in a sense, and they work with the electrons. It's also important to understand the power of salts, because salts dissolve parasites just like they do with slugs. So when people say, chemical treatments, medicines that a doctor is going to give you, and there's all sorts of things that do not work, but we have to understand that there are things that do work. Magnets, organite, and salts. I'm starting to distribute a product. They're miracle salts. They're even a step above Himalayan salts. And I've started to use them, and I've seen a difference. I'm getting kind of weird symptoms myself. But, my philosophy, and I hold this dear, not just, it's pretty much my truth, is that you know, they've got tools and modalities to link us into all this and to, really harness us into the artificial matrix. We know that. But you have to buy into the programming. I mean, if it was simple enough to just, create these pathogens and parasitic forces and, nanotechnology, if it was just that alone, then they wouldn't bother with the false flags. They wouldn't bother with the Lady Gagas. They wouldn't bother with all the other places that we get bombarded. They wouldn't bother targeting sacred union relationships. They wouldn't even pay attention to all that. They'd just be spraying us with chemtrails and leave it at that. But my thing is that you have to buy into the programming, and I've said this before, so it's maybe redundant to some, but once you buy into the programming and you believe in these distortions, you believe in the false flags, and you're really a part of the programming, yes, then their, tools will work. The nanoparticles will work. The chips will work, but we have to understand that it's bait. The programmings out there that we see in the news and in the media are bait. And like a mouse, if we take a bite of the cheese, the trap's going to fall on our head. Similar to healing, tools and modalities will not work on us unless we know we can heal. We have to buy into the program of our own healing abilities and our ability to regenerate and heal ourselves, or else no tool or modality is going to work. So it's the consciousness of each being, which is the most powerful force there is. But you got to really pay attention to what you're attaching yourself to. What are your belief systems? What are you buying into? Because if we buy into the program, their tools will work and further immerse us in it, and our health will either suffer or not suffer because we won't know the difference. When our health suffers, it means we're beginning to wake up. We're feeling the physical effects and the symptoms. So then we can turn the other direction, how to address the symptoms, and to utilize the incredible healing modalities and tools that there are, but to recognize your consciousness has to believe in the power of yourself to heal yourself. And so I, mentioned some, working with earth energies, essential oils, are highly beneficial. And also detoxing and clearing the system. But even if we do find that we have difficult symptoms that we can't clear, focus on your consciousness, and we have to be a little bit detached from the physical form right now so that we don't, go into fear and like, oh my God, what's that? Or I got this headache, or, I'm not, and we get further immersed in it. And it's no different than a cancer patient when it's dealing with, which route it's going to take to heal. Are you going to take the holistic approach? Are you going to go to the root of what's causing it? Or are you going to allow the doctor to, put you, in a treatment that's going to kill all the good stuff while, a person's crippled by the medicine alone. There are solutions out there. And, these entities, were introduced to nature. They're not organic to nature. The whole predator-victim dynamic isn't, natural. Neither is patriarchy. And so it's the energetics we need to address because energy happens before things manifest. And when we get a grip on our own energetic bodies, what we end up reflecting, what we end up attracting ourselves to, becomes a part of the solution. And that's where the spiritual immune system comes in. If our bodies know how to heal a wound and create a scab, our spiritual bodies know how to, attract us to the real medicines if we can be open and receptive and empowered to, be able to look in that direction instead of all the other crap being thrown at us, which gets us further enslaved, in the deceptions. It's crucial we don't give our power away. And even if it seems benevolent, that we fall back on ourselves and we first learn to do that, because without that, we don't have discernment.
Well, and discernment comes up a lot. I mean, that's
another overused word.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think that there's a misinterpretation a lot of times. I not at all. I think that discernment is absolutely, it's a benchmark for anybody. When you become very discerning, half the battle, right? You got to remember, and that's another thing. This is all a process. I remember a time in my life when, you could tell me something, anybody could tell me something, and, you looked like you were telling the truth and you looked believable. And I just said, oh, wow. And discernment I think it's a wisdom thing. It's part of being wise. Discernment is, using all of these, other parts of other aspects of ourselves, spiritual, physical, emotional, parts of our being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, yes, parts of our being. And a wise person can be very instantaneously discerning. Yes, I'll do this. No, I won't do this, and just follow it. Because back in all of this and buried in all of this is trust. And I think one of the ways, for me personally, what I've observed in the world, and you can tell us what you think, Laura, I think that they have broken us, and it's that trust. Because I think without trust, I mean, you can even love without trust. Without trust, you have no radar. You have no, you don't know what to believe.
Yes.
Trust is really important, but go ahead. What are you seeing in the world of trust, rebuilding trust? People who bring up that they don't know what to believe anymore. How do you guide them towards that ability to grow and learn, get back to their roots and become wise again and discerning again and building trust again?
These are just the best conversations ever. I just love being on your show. Yeah, I mean, trust. Yeah, I mean, I guess the way I approach it is it's important not to just blindly trust other humans. It's important not to trust anything that's being thrown at us, anything that has a lot of exposure in the world. It's important to question everything. So when one starts to just question, who can I trust? That's a call to trust yourself, to go into your own self-reflection, your own inward process, and start to feel strong in your own inner foundation. Start to trust your body and its wisdom, because, we don't experience pain because we're victims. We experience pain because it has a message, and we have to listen to what that message is. When we start to run away from it and we start to, want to trust other people's opinions about what we should do with it, like doctors or even, ones that say, I can heal you, without that person taking the step to recognize where it originated, we're going to lose ourselves. Even the best intentioned people that want us to trust us, we might find, hey, their information has fallen flat. It's not really working on me. So, there's those that are deceptive, but then there's those that mean well, that, their information might not really resonate in the way that we'd like to see. So that's the time to step back. And this is really, the basis of my path, and what I share a lot publicly is the inner journey, going into the underworld, going into that zone which has become hell. Really, that zone needs to be purified, because it's the mother womb. It's the power of regeneration and creativity. And when we can access our creative imagination and bring it down into our own depths and darkness, which is fertile and very creative, then we're able to really manifest exactly what we need to take care of ourselves. It's a part of just who we are and how we're built by nature. And so when we keep looking outside of ourselves, we're always going to find that, the trust issue does come up, because we haven't first trusted ourselves. And so when we do trust ourselves and we know how to fall back on ourselves, we end up reflecting and attracting people that we can count on more, people that are more trustworthy. And it doesn't mean that we should give our power to them or ever trust anyone, but we know that we're with people that have integrity, we know that their heart's in the right place, and we know that they're doing the best that they can. But nobody should have our absolute and total trust, except for spirit, except for our relationship with the depths of our soul and the messages it gives us on an intuitive level, and then what our body is trying to tell us. And this is where high school and the school system really robbed us, because everything was about being trendy. Everything was about, are you with the cool kid? Everything was just such a play on our own self-worth. And a lot of people, gave into it because they didn't want to feel like the oddball out. And then in the larger world, when they, move on from that experience, it still plays out, where, maybe our parents we recognize, or our friends' parents, or things we see in society, where people are so bent on status and achieving the American dream and having the fame or the car or this and that and all that stuff we talk about a lot. That's trusting the system to take care of you if you play the game. And if you put this amount of time in, you get your certificate, and then you get that job that pays, a person might blindly trust the system and then find, wow, the system's corrupt. Who am I? And then the identity crisis happens. And what happens when one loses ego attachments and identities? They go into the dark night of the soul. And in that, we're very targeted, where we feel weak, and it's easy to fall into a whole nother trap. But embrace it. Embrace the discomfort. Allow yourself to dissolve into nothingness and start to trust spirit, and start to trust the void and the dissolution of ego into the space of our own unified field, our own inner blueprint. And that's the force we can trust. And once that part of us steps forward, then when we look at information, we can say to ourselves, hey, that resonates. Hey, I want to read more of that. That totally connects to a truth I already know. And then people can start feeling good about each other. But I don't want anybody to ever hear me speak and just gobble it up and say that's truth. I try and push enough buttons to get the person's free thinking mind going, and then to do the inner work. And I just, that's a big focus for me. And then, the information I share, I say, take what resonates and dump the rest. Maybe it's stuff a person's not ready for, and maybe there's some gray areas I'm sharing that shouldn't fully be owned. But, because I'm positively orientated and I have integrity, it's not coming from a bad place. But we got to, question everything. And, the greatest guides out there are the ones that encourage the inner work and self-empowerment, which is what you do and why I love you so much, because we know it's about empowerment. And once we have that, it's much easier to navigate this realm and find people of like mind, people that are, passionate about what we're passionate about. But we can't just, take it all in. And if you are going to take it all in, allow it to be something that you put in the same room with your intuition, and then move through it with your own discernment, and filter out, what doesn't really serve you. If it throws you into fear, spin it a little bit to find a different perspective, because fear does serve us, but it's not a destination. It's there to jolt us and to be cautious and to be aware. But then from there, we get to bring in a higher intelligence, our wisdom body, and stuff that's always been there, only covered up. Nobody needs to attain wisdom or attain enlightenment. It's about removing all the layers and all the garbage that has separated us from being able to really see that it's always there, and it's infinite, and it's a resource that nothing can kill because it's immortal. It's important to be able to access that place. And then once one does that, you can feel that you have trustworthy people around you, and you can trust your process. You can trust your evolution. You can trust the transformation that's inevitable when you locate that inner core essence of our blueprint.
Absolutely fabulous. Trust does start with oneself. I did a series on this once, and not too long ago, actually. And, it's very interesting what you're saying, because it is me who doesn't trust my own judgment. In the past, it's not you, it's not them. It's something comes up and I go, God, I don't know. I don't know it's me that's saying I don't know to me.
Yeah, well, I have something to say on that one, because
right?
That's a big one. I've experienced that a lot. I used to tell people, before I went public, I'm not going to go public until I stop being skeptical to myself, and until I know beyond a reasonable doubt that what I'm sharing is truth. I don't feel like opening my mouth. So, it put me in that big process of, how to relieve myself of self-doubt. And I let myself kind of go through a boot camp where I was testing myself and like, okay, if you know this to be true, then put it into play, see what happens. And when you get the results, then own it. And that could be just the miracle vibration, living on the road, or not having, much money, or, dealing with the vibration of, should I go into fear and survival, or should I own my miracle vibration and begin to manifest my needs without having anything to really count upon? No people to count upon, no paycheck to count upon. And those miracles did happen. So I can easily talk about it and know, hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And that's true. None of us are cut off from abilities, and only some have them. I mean, we all have them. And so, I just had to kind of be my own test subject to relieve myself of self-doubt. And of course, when we have self-doubt, it's easy to want to latch on to somebody else's information. And that's fine, as long as we see it as training wheels, as long as we see it as a way for us to start to wake up our cellular memory and know that we're not alone, and say, hey, okay, I was questioning this about myself. Oh my God, somebody else agrees. That helps to validate something I knew to be true. I think it's extremely useful. But yeah, self-doubt's a big one, trusting the self. And so that's a huge part of the inner journey and why it's so uncomfortable, because we go through many, many layers of fear, self-doubt, old wounds, projections, invalidations, and where we felt empowered and fell on our face and realized, wow, when I was confident, nothing really happened. And so we got to dig a little bit deeper and pull more of our substance forth, and gain the lesson, because there's always that peeling of the onion. Sometimes confidence doesn't mean, we necessarily have wisdom. And I think the ones that are insecure, are probably in a better place because at least there's humility. And I'm not saying insecure is good, but it's far better than being so arrogant that you become blind, but to start off, with self-doubt and to build strength with that foundation, is the same route of somebody who's arrogant that needs to have that reality check that, hey, maybe, you're not all that you thought you were, because
right.
The pedestals that people put themselves on. So it's all about the efficiencies, the deficiencies, and the extremes of swinging from one to the other and finding that middle ground. And then we can have, a lot more self-confidence. And it's not just trusting the self, it's trusting that the universe is picking up a huge part of the slack when we trust ourselves in knowing that where we fall short in trusting ourselves, we can at least set intentions. We can at least create visions and dreams. We can at least start to send out signals to the universe of what our deepest soul longing is, and then trust that if we devote ourselves to it and our own integrity, the universe is going to assist us and the forces are going to help us to get those needs met. And so if we can't trust ourselves fully, there's other, we can at least trust that our intentions do serve us, and they inform our creative energy of how to give back to us. I look at it like the skipper on a ship. Tell the crew exactly what you need. Imagine the crew is your creative energy. If you don't tell it what your intentions are, what your needs are, it's just going to sit around and slack off or match whatever vibration you're holding. When we set our intentions, though, and we devote ourselves to it and we walk the walk, no matter how much self-doubt we have, we're still creating a lot of miracles for ourselves and a lot of protection. I mean, I struggle with self-doubt too, and I don't have an easy time trusting others, but these techniques have really helped me to stay grounded and to really really feel effective despite some of the traps I fall into where I'm just kind of lost in my own crap.
Right. No. Hey, this is good stuff because it's the real deal. I mean, it's so simple, and that's why I love having these conversations. It's so simple. It's just, and it's easy. See, what you're talking about is all of this, even dark nights of the soul, reconnecting with self identity, getting to know ourself again, or re-engaging in what we used to like or what we were passionate about, and getting, some people who quit, doing, let's say, painting or art, for 5 years, and then they realize I'm miserable, and they go back, and all of a sudden their heart opens up to their inspiration, their creativity again, and they're happy again, and blah, blah, blah. Doesn't mean that we don't have milestones along the way or things. Life is always challenging. It's always challenging. The heart challenges us. The head challenges us. And as far as I'm concerned, the people who live in my head have nothing to do with me. They're renters taking up space in my mind. You know what I mean? And they don't even pay rent. They don't even give me money. But the point is to be able to recognize that voice. And I think that what you're describing is so important, the self-identity, to recognize our own voice, because each of us has been robbed of the dignity of our own voice via, social engineering and all the rest of it. You described it a little bit earlier. Oh, I have to have that puppy and put it in my purse and walk around because everybody else is doing it. Britney Spears is doing it and whatever. And everything becomes so passé eventually. Know the voice in our own head. Know the voice that belongs to us, and we can have anything you want. And I love what you're talking about when you say the universe will support us. It's a very simple task. That part. Do what you love. Do what you're passionate about. Absolutely. There's all kind. I mean, I could complain all day long about what's not going right. Can't we all? But there's so many things that are going right. Yes. And yes, doors open. And yes, we meet people. And I say it like this. If somebody makes you feel good, they're probably all right. I mean, it's pretty much across the board. Somebody makes you feel good. That's your heart. That's the bypass of those lower chakras. Your heart goes, God, that person feels good. I don't mean somebody who's, blowing smoke up your butt. I don't mean somebody who's just like, all over you, like, oh, I love your eyes. I love your lips. I'm talking about somebody who you're just sitting with, 3 seats down, and you're watching them talk, or you're hearing, and you just go, God, I really like that person. They make me feel good about myself. There's something huge in a person that makes you feel good about yourself. What is that?
Right, totally. And this is just the process. Like, we're always challenged, and that's why we move through those layers where those false validations, that are just very superficial, aren't the substance of a real soul-to-soul, heart-to-heart connection. And that's, why the Fool card in the tarot is the 0 point energy. It's the zero. What does the Fool do? It's totally fine falling on its face and getting back up again because it gains the wisdom, and it's okay with it because it's a child. It's childlike innocence, but it's the closest to source that we can get. So trial and error. We learn, what it really means to make a connection, and maybe we had to move through the other layers first, and maybe the same challenges get thrown to us again. But that's the foundation we can rest in, is being in the now, being sensitive enough to, have that inner voice inform us. And that's true courage, is when we do listen to that inner voice, despite what anybody else thinks. And I think anybody who takes that stand is being, absolutely brave in the face of everything that wants us to do the opposite. And just, fall into the trap of the social engineering agendas like we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's dangerous stuff. And like you said, it's so obvious, it's not a conspiracy that they're building a complete artificial world all around us. And, you mentioned Morgellons disease earlier. These are synthetic fibers that actually house themselves and multiply within the confines of the, using the human body as a host. And this is interesting I think it's even an interesting word, host.
Mm-hmm.
It's an ancient word too. And it's not just a new word, the host of, whatever. It's quite interesting to me. Again, some things never change, right? And in this world in which we live, yes, we are speeding up because the age of communication sped up. We have instant communication around the globe now. That's what's happening. And I think it's really important that people know something as well. We've been around a long time, us humans, and speaking of humans, we've been around a long time. We've been through many ages. You talked about Lemuria and back in the day, in the Egyptian age, that's much older than it seems, and all of these amazing, civilizations that we're digging up. That anthropologists are digging up and finding, oh my God, this one's 22,000 years old, and this one's 25,000 years old. The timeline, like you said, it's all screwed up. It's like there's the artificial timeline, then there's this, then there's the true timeline, and as complicated as all of this sounds, all right, the true timeline is the one you're describing, the one that when you go inside yourself and you start doing that work and you start reconnecting, that's the only place that is real.
Right. And the artificial timelines can be seen like subpersonalities. It's when aspects of ourself that have fragmented it away from our core start to buy into this other crap. But like on a core level, there's always that timeline. It's just as infinite and permanent as source energy itself, because that's where it came from. But we're made of that, and we're a part of that. And that's what's so important, and the thing is, people think, oh, because we have differences of opinion, we have to kind of be in battle mode. And, the thing is, oneness is diversity and harmony. And, it's amazing because we find differences of opinions and all sorts of Facebook crud, being thrown back and forth because people don't agree. But those conversations would be so beautiful and wonderful if people could just hold a vibration of integrity and kindness and respect. And then it's like, who cares what the differences are? At least we're talking on a heart-to-heart level rather than, condemnation or judgment or this or that. And it's like, and it's when people lose their space that people like you and me get like...
And welcome back. Laura, wrapping up, not just a thought that we had before the break. You were talking about the, people like, for instance, in social media networks like Facebook, somebody disagrees with somebody, and then it's it seems like it is. And I know it's even happened to me for sure, where it does something, and then all of a sudden there's just like this combative mode, like you disagreed with me, and so then we get combative. And I think it goes back to a lot of the stuff we talked about during the show already. I think what it is isn't it interesting how you disagree with me, how I get angry? Where'd that come from? And really, the only place that I can think of where it came from is that what it equates to, and this goes back to social engineering, the wires being crossed in all of us, it goes back to our self-esteem. Because what it's saying to me is like, you're disagreeing with me. I'm just using this as an example. You're disagreeing with me, so I must be inferior.
Right.
Right. And so that's why I think that what starts to happen is it's proof right there in living color that if we go back and we really work on the self-esteem gets us out of a lot of trouble. When our self-esteem is solid, and their self-esteem, don't get confused, people, by, oh, today you got a raise, so your self-esteem is way up there. You got a paycheck raise or whatever. Self-esteem is an ongoing project. You know what I mean? And self-esteem is coming from a place of really, I think this as, our divine, you talked about divine justice earlier in the show and divine everything. Our divine right is to be our divine unique self, because that is something each and every person is, a unique gift. I mean, if a snowflake can be unique, why can't a human be unique? There's nothing wrong with that. And not being confused with being egotistical because you're so special, unique. I mean, we're all, you know what I mean? We're all unique. Look at every child in an infirmary. Every child that's born in an infirmary, and you have kids, you know this for yourself, Laura. They all smile just a little different. Their eyes have just a little bit of a different gleam, or how they express themselves when they're laughing or they're crying. Somebody, you have two sons. One did it a little different than the other. You love them both equally, but we're all so unique, don't you think?
Absolutely. And that's why, oneness is diversity and harmony. And so, I have to say because I really do follow everything you're doing, and I have so much respect for the way you handle all of it. I think you're just right on target. I think people need to watch the way they word things, because there's trigger reactions in the way that people, approach their differences. And there's a certain level of attack, and it feeds on, where there might be a little bit of self-esteem lacking, but at the same time, you stand your ground, and you know how to put people in their place, and you're not going to let that creep into you. So I just have to, say that, and I admire and respect every way you handle it, because I'm always messaging you oh my God, I agree, oh my God, because, people got to learn just really how to talk to each other, and you don't need to post on things you don't agree with. Okay, I don't want to get into that too much, but
I know what you mean. I know what you're talking about. It's you don't have to participate. You don't have to read. You don't have to be there. Yeah, I get it. We're talking about social network behavior.
Right. So anyway, I just had to say that about you, though, because I'm always just yes. And I just think that's just something people need to clean up, because the thing is, we need to honor our uniqueness and our differences and find a way to bridge the gap in how we express ourselves, so that it can be a unifying force rather than something that continues to separate us. And it's in the tone, it's in what we carry. And we can recognize that there's no differences that are too big for us when we see the unique quality of each of us and we respect the different roles that we carry. But when it's you should do this and you should think that way, it's very invasive. And of course, somebody needs, we have to stand our ground, because we get infected with that energy, and we're all, dealing with, very creative energies, and we don't need the contamination to leak in. And so I find myself having to stand my ground and be, sometimes aggressive about it. But yes, we're all unique, and that's the beauty. And we all might see things, through a different light, but it's our integrity and just the universal love that we hold that can allow us to appreciate these differences rather than have them be, an issue. Because, hey, if it works for you, go for it. But don't step on my turf and tell me, how to be. That's what gets to me. We can, advise each other and say, hey, can you, maybe be a little bit kinder with your response? Hey, that's fine, because that's promoting peace. But this is where we've been targeted against each other, and this is where we're in the self-annihilation zone. And it happens, in relationships, it happens, in social networking, and it's just an important thing for people to recognize. The self-confidence, isn't based on the superficial things that we, get credit for in life. It has to do with feeling so strong in ourselves that, we can't really be brought into a place of defensiveness. But see, defensiveness gets triggered when the communication starts off, out of alignment. I think that it's easy for all of us to get triggered. I think we're all traumatized. I think we're all exhausted. I think, there's just much kinder approaches so that we can boost each other's self-esteem, and at the same time do it in a real way where we can express our opinions, without, being an asshole about it. Excuse my language.
Yeah, no, you're right. I have a perfect example for this. I'm sure you've got a million of them too. But, there was this guy ever since, I'm going to say his name. I'll tell you his first name. His name's Robert. And since I got on Facebook 4 years ago, whatever, when this all began, this whole thing began, this whole thing for me anyway, with activism and everything. And I got to tell you, he used to throw little pot shots at me all the time, like all these years, and why don't you do this, Roxy? Why don't you do that? And then I would do it. I go, that's a good idea, and before you knew it, I built a website, we had our volunteers built a website. And before you knew it, I was doing radio. Before you knew it, I was doing videos and this and that. Before you knew it, I was doing investigate. Why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? And it was I'm not kidding you. It was recent, 6 months ago. And he just said, and I would just be nice, oh yeah. But he just started, over the years, he just irks me, because it's like he just kicks me all the time, kicks. And one day he just kicked me the wrong way, and I wrote him privately, and I just said, I don't know why you treat me so mean. I don't know what I've done to you. And I said, believe me, I've got the mouth on me, baby. I could tell you off. I could end the friendship, whatever we've got going, I could really I really do you damage, man. I was just so mad, you know what I mean? And I just said, at the end of the day, I'm not going to do any of that, because I'm going to be really honest with you and tell you that over the years, I've really grown, I've really changed, I've really this, I've really that, and you're just the same bully. you're just a bully in in the courtyard here. And I just said, and I don't know why you do it, because at the end of the day, it hurts my feelings.
See, and
That's what I
so
said.
perfect.
It hurts my feelings. And he wrote back, and he was so embarrassed.
Aw.
And right. And now we're like the bestest friends.
And that's where this is such a perfect example. I'm so glad you said it, because it could have gone in a completely different direction, and it actually brought you two together. And this is the thing, with relationships, friendships, everything, everybody in our lives. When a challenge comes up, when differences come up, allow it to bond you. Don't allow it to separate you, because when you really just get into the zone of sharing what you're feeling and what this person, the effect that they're having without blame or judgment, then there's not, the defensiveness, and there, it's more like compassion opens up, understanding.
Yes.
And we all have to do that. And it sounds like we're just kind of like, like this is a tangent, but it's not. This is everything. This is what the real work is in unifying ourselves. This is all the wars in history, all the false flags, everything that we see under the sun is to pit us against each other, so that we, are either holding on to historical resentments or resentments in our differences. And this is the big stuff that's getting targeted. And it's these little steps that we take that are going to start to weave us together as a whole and in our oneness. And when we do that, that's the tipping point. That's when we activate something huge on this planet, and all this other stuff starts to fall away. And that's why, it might just seem like, is this really that big of a deal? I think it absolutely is. And I think it's important that, these things get addressed.
It's huge. It's huge. And thank you for acknowledging that. I was just thinking, I know you probably would have done the same thing, but, I don't know, this is a couple years ago, very quickly, I was feeling like I so humiliated because I did something and it was wrong. And I made a wrong call on something. I made a wrong judgment call. And I was feeling miserable. I was talking to one of my girlfriends, and I was crying. And I said, she goes, well, you have so much shame right now, sweetheart. She kept saying, you have so much shame. What's going on with you? And I said, I just feel like the biggest retard. And I used that word retard. And you know what she said to me? And it made me laugh, and it made me feel better. She said to me, then I'll be a retard with you.
Aw.
I know.
Oh, awesome. And I do that too.
Perfect answer. And I was like, really? And she's like, sure, because I was right there with you. I thought that you were right on. And, it turns out, you made a bad call, but I was right. So I'll be a retard with you.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's it. That's the stuff. That's the stuff, because it takes away the shame-based BS.
Yeah, and we have to be that honest with ourselves, because I do the same. I keep, my partner, Dr. Dream, up sometimes. I'm like, I can't believe I said that. I hope they didn't misunderstand me. It came out the wrong way. And I sit there and I'm like, I can't believe, with all the evils in the world, that I'm being this hard on myself because I said something in a way that made me feel, like, wow, that really wasn't representing what I wanted to share from my heart. And so many times, I go back and I go over, all of it, and I have to kind of clear it and just forgive myself and take a different approach the next time. And you know what? That's what a spiritual being is. It's not about being perfect. It's about being honest with the self, being proactive in the way that we create change when we see that it needs to be altered and transformed. It's being conscious and aware and humble and self-reflective and all those things. None of us are going to be perfect in a world like this. But as long as we take the approach that you have with these examples and I process in a similar way, then, we can be in our divine innocence and keep stepping it up. I ripped somebody a new one the other day, and I'm still like, okay, I know that wasn't the right thing to do, but this person's been harassing me for years. They've got websites and everything under the sun, totally targeting me. And sometimes the pressure cooker does build, but I know, that's not the higher road, and I self-correct. And, we can't carry shame and guilt and regret. We just have to self-correct, because once we get the message, then we've got the wisdom, and that's the gift and resource we get to share, and it inspires other people to do the same. And that's what it means to navigate this experience.
Yes, Laura, and I can totally dig what you're saying, about this person that has a website against you. I've got several of those myself, and it's ironic that you just brought that up, because I was reading one of them a couple of days ago, this whole forum on how I'm a government shill, Roxy Lopez, so I'm just going to let everybody know right now. I'm a government shill. I'm paid by the government, and I'm also part of a Fortune 500 company, and I'm a multi-billionaire. Really.
Oh my gosh.
But he's got a whole bunch of people who actually believe this. Yeah. And I want to step in the forum and just go, are you kidding me? But at the same time, it's like, and this brings me to this part, which and I know best. and a lot of the listeners do as well. Where do I want to spend my energy? Energy is very valuable. It's just like if you have $100 in your bank account, you decide where do you want to spend the $100. You could spend it wherever you want. You earned it. Do you want to spend it at the grocery store? Do you want to spend it at the movies? Do you want to do a little of each? Do you want to buy a gift for your hubby? You know, whatever it is. And energy is the same way. We have X amount of energy, and how do we want to spend it?
Yes.
And you are obvious to me. It's so obvious to me. I mean, we've really become very close, you and me, Laura, in our missions, right? It's so cool. It's so cool. It's so cool over the years. But because we watch each other. We see each, like you said, you watch me, I watch you. You know, I mean, we're spying on each other. We just notice each other, and we see the works, and we see this, and you start to align with this other energy with each other, and this and that, blah 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 blah, and then we become what? You know, we're rooting for each other all the time, and this is, you know, I have this with Laura. Laura has this with me. Laura has it with lots of friends too. I have it with lots of friends. This is what this is all about, though, right, Laura? I mean, isn't this what? If I'm going to infect the planet, I don't like using the word infect, but if I'm going to make something contagious on the planet, shouldn't it be love and smiles and hugs and coolness and companionship?
Absolutely. And that's, oh my gosh, I remember before I was just, you know, really in the deepest of my struggles, before I was really out there, I said, you know, really all I want is to be able to love humanity and just share that love. That's what I felt most blocked from. And with all this other stuff, it had nothing to do with anything else. And that's why, you know, our connection has been so inspiring and huge for me, because I'm like, this is where it's at. When we start to connect, when we find those affinities and just, you know, that support where we're just there for each other, you know, it's all about inviting everybody to join us. It's like, come on, this is where it's at. You know, we can fall on our face. We can get back up again. We can, you know, strengthen each other. We can, you know, listen and just hold space and whatever, you know, it takes. That's what it's about. This is unification. Why is unity consciousness, you know, called unity consciousness? It's the consciousness that we hold that is all about bringing the masses together to connect on a heart and soul level and a spirit level, and to dump the rest, to let it all shed away. And anytime I make a connection with somebody like I have with you, that's when I feel that the vibration on the planet has even raised itself, because it's us coming together that's doing it. This is the most important stuff, and I love it.
Yeah, me too. And it's magical. It's like trippy. All right, I promise people we're going to have a couple of questions real quick. And even though they're, you know, a bit off the topic and they know it too, but that's okay. So they got a question for you. Noodles wants to know, are they physical beings or interdimensional beings? And she's talking about the gatekeepers.
Right, and that's the little note that I put in the Skype chat. That's what it was addressing, but it ended up addressing that other thing as well. So that's
gotcha.
Perfect. Yeah, so yes, they're physical and non-physical.
Okay.
Gatekeepers, you know, are part of our inner journey, and when we hit a wall, it might be a programming, it might be something that somebody's throwing at us that's trying to control us and limit us. It can be, you know, an entity attack, a psychic attack. It's anything that involves a hurdle that we need to overcome. That's a gatekeeper, but there are specific gatekeepers that are archetypal energies that are very ancient that people hold, because, you know, we all inherit these archetypal energies, and you know, these particular beings are not integrating, you know, anything else but that particular archetype or entity, and they actually are specific gatekeepers. And when, you know, I would Google, you know, Inanna's journey into the 7 gates of hell, because it's about moving through those different dimensional gateways, and there are different forces that do not want us to pass through those gateways, because when we do that, we're empowered, we're in our power. And that's, you know, the divine feminine myths and all those stories are about that dark night of the soul journey into the underworld. And gatekeepers just don't want us to have that knowledge and wisdom, and can make it very painful and difficult. And that's why people turn back and give their power away and say, hey, I can't do this. But just keep doing it, because those gatekeepers are part of the illusion. They're parts of us that are trying to stop ourselves, like our own negative ego, our own fears. And yeah, there's representatives of it on the planet, but we don't want to externalize it. We have to understand that we become our own gatekeepers when we allow those voices to override our wisdom and our truth and you know, our divine just potential and blueprint of what we're made of.
Absolutely. You said something very important there. I had a mentor, and I'll share this very quickly, and then we'll move to the next question. And I said to her one day, it was many, many years ago, and I said, I just don't like the way, my friend treats me. She's just really a bully. She's really abusive. And it's just like, it's definitely a pattern in my life, bullies. But, and I said, I don't like, and she said, well, and this was very empowering for me. She said, people treat you the way you teach them to treat you.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Not allow, treat you the way you teach them to treat you.
Yep. And it's also, the receptor and plug. If there's a receptor and somebody's carrying an energy and they see that they can plug into that receptor, a weakness or just an insecurity or anything, we're kind of like, it's kind of a gift for us to get that attack, because then it's like, oh, I need to override that. I need to raise my frequency above this. I need to get the message so that it's not, being attracted to one space anymore. Same thing with illness. Same thing with anything, that feels like an attack. The journey going past the gatekeepers is becoming senior to those forces, not running the other way, but saying, hey, I see where I'm enabling this. I see where it's responding to me, just like you said. And then, okay, then what do we do with it? And similar to you, the bullies, the attacks and all this. And it's like, hey, buddies, you're creating a monster here because,
right.
It just gets gobbled up. And this is the thing with, the unity of the masculine and feminine within us. It gobbles up the negative ego. It swallows it up, because the only reason that energy ever stepped forward was in the separation of those energies. When we allowed the illusion of separation to keep us from that connection, this other entity came forth, and it happens to be the elite, but we carry that within ourselves as well. So we got to focus on what's inside, because the game that's being played outside, we're enabling. And if we're an agent to change it, we don't have to worry about the timelines. I mean, we can worry on behalf of others, not worry in a negative way, but be concerned. But we know that, we're free of the matrix, and now we're here to hold the hand and help people out of the maze. But you'll know it when you get there. When you're free of it, you'll know it. And I know that, us and many have broken free. So that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. Thank you. And let's see, from the chat room, Joan Quinn, Joa Quim. I can't read that, but you know who you are. Please ask Laura, what was her involvement in Project Pegasus, and can she confirm Barack Obama, aka Barry Soetoro, was part of the jump rooms to Mars, and recognizes it's a little off topic. That's fine, Joaquim. So yeah, what about it? What was your involvement, if any, in Project Pegasus, Laura? And was Barack part of that project?
Okay, well, I'm loosely tied to Project Pegasus. In 1972, Andrew Bashago, my friend and colleague, said that I was identified, a year before I was born, that I was going to have something to do with the way things were playing out in the larger picture in connection with the truth movement. I don't know how manipulated that information is. I'm not really here to trust everything that I hear, but I do have faith in Andrew Bashago and his integrity for sure. I was recruited to go to Mars. I wasn't a part of Project Pegasus in the same way that he was. I wasn't in the Mars training program. I was recruited to go into the project as a supposed eventually going to be a permanent colonist. That Project Pegasus was a project to initiate and set up. So Andrew Bashago was in sort of the setup project, and I was in the recruitment process to be a permanent colonist in what they were using the kids for on Project Pegasus to kind of test out and help to establish. And so, yes, Andrew Bashago was in a Mars training program with Barry Soetoro. Other witnesses like Regina Dugan and Brett Stillings can confirm this. When I look at, the Mars records from Michael Reif and a lot of the other testimony, it does, validate that, yes, Barry Soetoro, Obama, was a part of the Mars training program. Basically, we have to understand that the Mars training program and that whole agenda was set up in the Eisenhower administration from negative beings. I mean, I don't like to say negative, but beings that were out for themselves that wanted to steer humanity off this planet for an agenda that they manipulated us into thinking that it was to protect the human genome in the event of catastrophe, but in actual fact, it was for other reasons. And so they wanted to get the whole governments involved. That's why they prepare presidents to be able to go to Mars, because they really are trying to establish something there. But with Andrew being a whistleblower and me refusing to go to the Mars colony as a permanent colonist, I know we've screwed up their plans. I don't know what they're doing right now, but I know their plans have been screwed up. And yes, I'm pretty confident about Barry Soetoro. I have no direct proof, but I do know Andrew Bashago really well and can say that I feel his integrity, and I feel that what he shares, he knows to be true. And so I can just only say that I hold him in high esteem, and I feel that what he shares is the truth that he knows. But I would do further research,
Sure. No doubt. And I've had Andrew on the show a few times. I know what you mean about him. He doesn't. There's just nothing that ever resonates with me that he's making anything up or doing anything. He has integrity, and it's quite the story. But at the same time, it's not really hard to wrap your mind around or anything like that. As well as it wouldn't be hard to believe that you were, as a child, especially under Eisenhower's, when he was president, that this whole time period of what they had set up regarding Project Pegasus and many of the other projects with Mars, the jump room's not the only one, but it's not hard to believe, and it's not hard to wrap your mind. But thank you for answering that question for the audience. We're just about out of time. So this is what I'm going to say to you. Oh my God, Laura, you got to come back.
I'd love to. I love being on your show. I love your energy. And like I said, I'm just so happy for our connection, and it just really strengthens me and just brings me just so much. And I just have so much gratitude to you. You're an incredible force.
Oh, thank you. Well, you are. And I know that there are so many who tune in and tune into you and follow your work and everything. Do you have anything coming up real quick that I can put out there as far as any seminars you're speaking at? Were you in Sedona recently?
Yeah, I did the Ascension Rising Conference and then just did the Star Knowledge Conference. And what we have coming up, let me make sure I have the dates, is going to be in January. It's an event with George Nori Bashar, my partner, Dr. Dream, Barbara Lamb, and Nora Harold, and I'm just about to find that date in just a moment.
Okay. Sometime in January. Do you have it on?
It's I have it. It's Saturday, January 25th and 26th in Los Angeles. I think I'm going to be at the San Francisco Expo coming up, I think, in April. But the best place to check is my website for all those updates. I do actually need to update it, but I will now that I've said it. CosmicGaiaSophia.com. CosmicGaiaSophia.com.
And okay, so I have the wrong website for you. I have Cosmic Gaia 2012.
It's the same. It goes to the same place. Because we passed the 2012, I was like, I better change the name.
I know, right? And I always thought about that too. I was like, God, she still has 2012 on there. I know that's the bummer of 2012 because it's actually over. But I'll give the website, and her website, folks, is all linked up at thetruthand.com. You know that if you ever need to find Laura and you forget what it was, just go to thetruthand.com and there's a search engine there and just put Laura's name in it, and everything that we've done collectively with Laura will have it. And I'm sorry I didn't get to go see you over in Sedona. I was going to come and surprise you. I was going to come up with Trisha, who was helping up there, who lives in Tucson and everything. But I didn't get to come up. I've got a reason why, and I'll tell you off the air. But next time, I'm not letting you get away with coming.
Oh yeah, close. No, we're gonna our paths are gonna cross, no doubt, and it's gonna be perfect.
She was so cool. She was like, I was like, I want to surprise Laura, and she was like, you could stay in my hotel room, you could come up, you could do this, you could do that, and I really wanted to go and be there, but like I said, next time, I was supposed to speak in LA, I don't know, in a week or two, I don't know, but I'm not going to be doing it after all either. So, but next year's going to open up. What do you see real quick, because we got probably 10 seconds. What do you see for 2014? Is it getting better? Is it getting harder? What's going to happen here?
Well, I'm walking away from this interview knowing that it's going to get better, just knowing that if we keep empowering what we talked about and people really just start to do the inner work and we start to unify and really pay attention to this stuff, it's absolutely going to get better, no doubt. This is our birthright. This is who we are. Only we can get in the way. And we know, we're manipulated, but...
It's Kuru disease. Syrian Muslims infected with Kuru disease. I'm going to give you a link. You can read it on your own time if you want. Here's part of the report that really bothers me, because this is very similar to what we're talking about on the zombie series. Walid Theodore Shobet, a former member of the Radical Muslim Brotherhood, but now a truth-telling peace activist, writes in his blog that Kuru has been found in 8 to 20 people in war-torn Syria. And the only way it could have come about, doctors have confirmed, is through cannibalism and the consumption of human brain, as first reported by Arabian news source Zayman Al-Awasal and substantiated by Orient News Television. 2 of the infected were sent from Syria to a hospital in Gaziantep in Turkey for further examination, then transferred to another hospital in Germany. One of the 2 was confirmed to have eaten human flesh. He eventually died. Shubat has written extensively on Islamic cannibalism, which can be found, and I'll give you the links. The asymptomatic incubation phase of Kuru disease. Pay attention. The incubation phase is between 5 to 20 years following initial exposure. So you can be a carrier for 5 to 20 years and don't even know you have it, with the average being 12 years. But the Syrian civil war began in 2011, and this suggests that the Kuru of the infected Syrian men would have been transmitted before the civil war, before 2011. So I'm going to give you the link. You can take a look at it. Of course, I've already given this to Patrick Jordan right before the show, actually, because I want to go down that rabbit hole there and see what more we can get of it. But, again, people had been asking about, are we talking about zombies who eat brains, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? Well, we just found some who get this disease, and we're going to talk about that disease on the show on the 20th as well. Another interesting and fairly concerning news story, and of course my producer lives in Florida. Massive Florida sinkholes swallows boat and swimming pool, threatens homes. Now, the sinkholes have been going on for quite some time, the last couple of years. And another large sinkhole has formed in Florida, causing parts of 2 homes to collapse in on themselves and swallowing a boat and a backyard, the whole backyard and the pool. Caboodle. The sinkhole in Dunedin, Florida, erupted early Thursday morning, yesterday, between the 2 houses, and by noon had grown to a size of about 70 feet wide by 53 feet deep. This is interesting because it's right in a neighborhood. And all that. Can you imagine, you live in this neighborhood and you live in a house, you and your family, and all of a sudden your home starts to fall down, like into the ground. This is crazy stuff. There was apparently some work being done to try to fill in what they thought was a sinkhole beneath the house the last couple of days. And this is from the fire chief's Jeff Parks. He said, the owner woke up this morning at 5:40, that's yesterday, when he heard noises on his back porch, went out, and found the sinkhole at that point. Thank God it started in the backyard, not in the house itself. Conestoga Rovers and Associations, an engineering and environmental consulting company, confirmed it had been at the home earlier this week. Their company. A screened-in porch and a 14-foot-long boat at the home's property had collapsed into the sinkhole, and next door, the man
Revolution Radio proudly presents live from Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Denied Talk Radio with host Roxy Lopez. Join us here for topics you won't hear about on mainstream news, such as chemtrails, GMOs, nutrition, and conspiracy facts regarding your personal sovereignty. Humanity is 7 billion strong. We are the majority. And now, live from the Valley of the Sun, your host, Roxy Lopez.
Great Friday evening to all of you. Thanks so much for joining us. You are listening to the Truth Tonight Talk Radio. And of course, if you're only listening at this point to a player somewhere or whatever, and you want to join the chat room or anything like that, go ahead and go to freedomslips.com and join the chat room. It's right there. Just click it and you'll get a generated funky name, actually, or you can make your own name. You can make a real name or a fake name. Or one time I went in there. Yeah, only once. And my name was Schmoopy or something like this. So anyway, I think that's maybe a default name, but get in there because there's a lot of cool people in there, and generally who discuss the topics that we're on and bring a lot of information to the table as well. You know who we have today, and we're going to have just it's kick back because my guest this evening, this is going to be jam-packed information into 2 hours. Before I invite my guest, and I'll give you a little bit of background on her as well, I have a couple master bedroom and swimming pool had gone in. The garage at the second home was also starting to crumble by late morning. 6 houses in Dunedin, a city on central Florida's west coast, were evacuated and power and utility lines were cut off after officials had arrived. The engineering company that was working on the house earlier in the week was also on the scene, waiting for the ground around the sinkhole to become stable enough for them to work to fill it. And I'm going to follow up on this story in the future because I have been following up with some other stories around the United States regarding sinkholes. And, they go in and they fill them up, but then they sink again. So I'm really curious as to what's going on. I have a couple of reporters out in New Orleans on this because, as you well know, there's a huge sinkhole in New Orleans, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. And they have the Army civil engineers out there, and of course the roads are all blocked off going anywhere near the area. Otherwise, I'd have them go out and film it. But unless you own a small plane or a helicopter, I'm not going to see any more of the sinkhole over there. But anyway, I thought I'd send that out to you. If you have any, if you live in Florida or you know of any sinkholes in Florida and you want to contact me to investigate them, write me at info@thetruthDenied.com. That's info@thetruthDenied.com. Put in the subject line, Florida sinkholes information, and I'll definitely respond to you. And last but not least, we have an update from our favorite host of all times, who started this whole shebang on the air many, many years ago in the late 80s, Art Bell. And I love Art Bell. Well, we have an update from today from Art Bell. There have been like all these groups that have formed, and they're writing Sirius XM, and everybody's quitting Sirius XM, as you well know, and really fighting for him, and you need to get him back. And of course, we found out that Coast to Coast took over the spot that was full of news reports that I want to get through to you. First of all, I guess some people who listen to the show, I believe it was, might have been last Friday. Yes. I've heard some feedback that some people were very, very upset that I had mentioned that Obama lied about Obamacare. So, I'm sorry. Why are you getting mad at me? He's the one that lied. I didn't lie about anything. He lied. He said you could keep your plan. You can keep your doctor. It's all over mainstream news. I didn't make this up, And the 20 guys that built the alternative website, that website is up and running. It's still up and running, and people are getting their health care through the alternative website. That's not the government website. And by the way, the government's up to $623 million on the website that they built for the insurance plans and so forth, for the new health plans, and it still doesn't work. So I don't know what to tell you. Don't get mad at me. Please don't get mad at me just because I'm reporting the news. I'm sorry that you like Obama and you voted for Obama, but why are you mad at me for things that Obama is doing? That doesn't make sense. That's nonsense. Cut it out. Anyway, the next story that I want to bring up with you is very interesting. As you know, I've been doing a series with author Patrick Jordan and, of course, Dr. Will Spencer, and the series has been on zombies. And this is serious business. This isn't like a Halloween zombies or a Walking Dead type zombies. This is zombies, true zombies. We've been talking about a number of diseases that are pointing towards zombies. And of course, some of the questions that have been coming in as on the live shows, by the way, just to mention, they are going to be back having the discussion next month, Friday the 20th. You might want to mark that down. They're going to come back and do part 3 of the zombie series. But here's something that's really interesting. And this is starting to actually blow my mind, as if the rest of it didn't already blow my mind. There is a news report out, and